They sent Phil Kessel to the Arizona Coyotes, and along with Kessel, they sent Dane Burks and a 2021 fourth round pick. And going back to Pittsburgh is Alex Galchenyuk and Pierre Olivier Joseph.
Well, this is an interesting trade. If anyone has followed Penn's news, they've been very. There's been a lot of rumors about Kessel and how the management group and like Sully and Rutherford had started growing tired of his crap, and like how like he was being he was too, I guess, too addicted to gambling or whatever, and maybe. Yeah, well, it is known he is an avid poker player, and that they were tired of it. Then there's also rumors that like him and Sully were not on speaking terms, and Evgeny Malkin had to be the middleman, and that if he only wanted to play with Gino, but apparently Gino doesn't like playing with Phil. So and now that when Rutherford pretty much made it public that he was looking at trading Kessel, it pretty much turned a happy marriage, and it turned it toxic, and then it became a nasty divorce.
Yeah, sorry to interject. I'm pretty sure I saw like a comment from their general manager that basically said that Kessel asked to be traded like during the middle of last year, and they kind of just like held on to him. So you just like built up toxicity in there. And then another thing, talking about the poker, I'm pretty sure I saw like a picture of him playing at the World Series of Poker recently or something like that.
He plays at like World Championship poker games, and like as far as like his Wikipedia page told me, he won like with like entry fees as high as 25,000. He's only won like 17,000.
It's pretty funny. But back to the hockey side, Colin. If you have anything else to add, feel free.
Yeah. Pierre. I know Arizona like was pretty when they drafted Joseph. They were pretty high on him. And just a little quick tidbit: he is the younger brother of elite Tampa Bay Tampa Bay fourth line right winger Matthew Joseph.
Okay.
Although I think Matthew Joseph could be a top 9 player for Tampa next year. He's great in that regard. He is. But Joseph, like his offensive numbers in the Q, especially in the Q, don't really stand out as being all that great. But like from what I've heard, he plays a bit more of a safe style game while also being an offensive type defenseman. Great puck move. Like I don't know what the site is, but like that they have like these stats for like possession per 60 or whatever, and like they were able to get like 5 games of Pierre Olivier Joseph, and he was near the positive column on like pretty much every single aspect of it. So the dude's got a good frame of 6'2", but he's also pretty lanky. He's like only 100 pounds. Well, no, not 100 pounds. That would be way too light. He's 165 pounds, so he's a little bit lanky. He's a little bit small for an NHL defenseman, but I definitely think he can fill out his frame. And if he does, I think you could see one hell of a defenseman in the league next year, in a couple years anyway. Arizona, they get a top-notch scoring player, but he can't really do much else. And at times this year, especially this year, he was more of a liability for Pittsburgh than an asset, especially when it came to the power play. I think a good amount of the shorthanded goals that Pittsburgh gave up were because Phil Kessel blew a tire or just made a dumb decision. It's just so, but I think they're really they're not banking on, like, I know we've talked about it before off podcasts that Phil Kessel can carry an offense and he can't be the guy. I don't know if they're trying to bank on him being the guy, whereas they're hoping him and Keller have chemistry. But at the same time, when he had such a big offensive, like a 30-point gap between him and the next highest scoring Arizona player, you're kind of putting a lot of pressure on him producing just similar numbers. And there was also like a rumor that there was also as Josh Yohe of The Athletic, one of the more prolific Pens beat writers, tweeted out last night that apparently Phil had 7 on this note on the teams he said yes to, like in his 8-team list. 7 of them were teams that the Pens would never do business with, but the 8th one was Arizona. He pretty much wanted to go to Arizona no matter what. He likes Tocchet. He wanted to go be with Tocchet. He was pretty much using his trade clause to facilitate a trade to Arizona.
Okay.
I'll let you speak. Do you have anything on that Dane Burks gig? Because I have never heard of him at all.
I looked really quickly. He doesn't really look to grade out all that well in terms of where they project him to be. He may end up being maybe like third pairing defenseman, or max out as like a 7th defenseman. But I mean, that's not really what they're gaining in this trade from Arizona standpoint. I mean, Phil Kessel, a guy that can score a bunch of goals. In a smaller market, will taking the spotlight off of him to an extent, will that really help him become a better player? I think it will be, or, not become a better player, but get to the point of where he should be playing at. You're going to pair him, obviously, it's going to be with Clayton Keller. I think that's going to elevate Keller's game. It'll take, because when we were talking earlier, Arizona didn't have anybody that scored over 20 goals. They don't have anybody that's really facilitating offense. I mean, they brought in Galchenyuk, and they thought that he could have been like one of those guys to really, help them turn a corner. And he really turned out to not really do all that much for them. And I mean, I'm even seeing people now say that this is his 3rd team. Well, it's going to be his 3rd team in 3 seasons. Is he a bust at this point? And I can see that, I can see where that's going with him really being a bust. But the thing is, we'll see what will happen with him being on the Penguins, because now he's going to be playing down the lineup a little bit on a more stacked team. So maybe we'll see his full potential kind of like break out this year. So I guess that'll be something to see as the year goes on. The Pierre Oliver Joseph guy, he's a good prospect. I think that he's going to be good. Like you were saying, Colin, if he fills out a little bit more in terms of his weight, I think that he'll be a good defenseman. More of a a guy that can move the puck and skate around with it. Probably a little bit more offensive minded than defensive minded, but that's not a bad thing for a Penguins team that's starting to get up there a little bit in age with some of its core players, maybe adding in some of these younger guys so that there's not really that much of a lag between them contending now and then contending in the future. I think that he's a good piece for them. And then, I mean, Arizona needs to really get somebody that's going to, have people go out and watch the games. I mean, Brad Richardson, who we talked about earlier, isn't really the guy that's going to, put people in the seats. I think Phil Kessel could be. He's a sniper, right? He's a guy that's going to be putting pucks in the net for them. And like I was saying, I mean, having him out of the spotlight a little bit more in a smaller market, I think will do wonders for him. And at first, I wasn't really a fan of the trade from Arizona side, but the more that I look at it and the more that I look at some of the statistics and just looking at it from the bigger picture, I think that this is a good trade for Arizona, but I also think it's a good trade for Pittsburgh. So I think it's a pretty balanced and pretty even trade.
I want to say something on Galchenyuk real quick. I don't know if this qualifies as bust territory for him as a bust for Galchenyuk. I mean, bouncing around, yes, but at the same time, he's been able to put up around 50 points in previous years, and he's been able to put up points on some pretty not good teams. It's not that he's not going to be as good as he was supposed to be. I get he's not a bust in the sense that he was literally terrible and he couldn't play in the NHL. He's just a bust. He's a bust in the sense that like he just wasn't. He's not able to. He wasn't able to live up to his potential.
Yeah, where he was drafted 3rd overall.
It,
They
the
were
dude
they
just
were
cannot.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were they were thinking that they were getting a guy that was like borderline superstar potential, and then immediately he started to go down. He went from being a guy that was borderline superstar potential down to like a second line forward. He went up
I
a little bit and then dropped down. But like I was saying, I think that he will do better in Pittsburgh than he has in Montreal and in Arizona, just because of the fact that um, the pressure is going to be off of him a lot more than it was in the previous two spots that he played. So
I,
maybe not fully bust, but maybe not living up to what he was supposed to be, I think is a better way of putting it.
I think he most likely could be that guy that slots in with Malkin and has chemistry, hopefully, because God knows he's been looking for years to find a permanent left wing for Malkin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could definitely see that being a combination that could work out. And I just, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. Well, I just hope we just can't play him at C. The dude just cannot play C at the NHL level. But
Yeah, no,
I
he
also
can't.
think that Montreal kind of rushed him a lot. Like they thought they were getting someone who could be NHL ready right now, but they rushed him. They rushed him pretty big, and I think that kind of hindered his development a little bit. Injuries also play a part in Galchenyuk's career. He's been pretty injury prone throughout his career. Well, at least he's had some times where he's missed a lot of the season due to injury.
Mm-hmm.
So it's certainly like I've seen a lot of Pens fans just cry out and complain about the trade because they're giving up a guy who like gives up like local around here we have Pittsburgh on one of our radio stations we have a guy named Mark Madden who does like an afternoon sports show, and for a while he's been on like the Troy Kessel train.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever he's tried to facilitate discussion on the show, it's just like, give me a reason why we shouldn't trade Kessel besides point per game. Like, give us a reason to not trade Kessel besides him being a top offensive talent.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. Kessel literally does nothing else. He just scores. He doesn't play defense. He doesn't really forecheck. He doesn't get into the corner. He's not physical. He doesn't block shots.
Mm-hmm.
He's just
he's
a guy.
He's a prototypical sniper, and that's really it.
Yeah, you pay him to be that, but I don't think that's what the Pens needed at this point. They need stronger forecheckers. They need guys who could probably play a little bit more physical, considering how the league may be shifting back towards some physical play. Or they also just need forward depth in general.
I have a couple quick points.
Go ahead.
Make if you don't mind.
It's almost an hour 30 minutes we've been doing this.
Yeah, Trevor, go ahead.
Yeah. This will be the last season of the Galchenyuk contract. He will be a UFA next summer, so if he doesn't perform well in Pittsburgh, that'll be $4.9 million potentially off the books for the Penguins next summer. I know they're up there near the cap, so that could help them. Kessel, 3 more seasons, $6.8 million cap hit for the Yotes. But also keep in mind, the Maple Leafs are still helping with paying $1.2 million of that contract. So when he was originally traded to Pittsburgh, the Leafs did retain part of that Kessel contract. And Arizona does have a potential chance of making the playoffs. Kessel, he can still score goals at his age. 27 goals last season, 34 the year before. So he can get you 20 goals easily per season. And also, Darcy Kemper really got going near the end of the season. And if he can continue that going into this upcoming season, Arizona could potentially make the playoffs. But the Western Conference is very, very difficult. There are a lot of good teams there, and especially in that Pacific Division they're in.
It's difficult. It's I like to call the Western Conference, at least this past year, maddeningly bad. Like, you have
it was very
just
mediocre.
although I think that